Hello, welcome to my channel. Lying in a puddle of his own blood and water, a young boy could be seen staring up at the sky. His blue eyes slowly lost their light as blood exited his body from the fist-shaped hole in his chest. Is this how it ends? The boy thought as his blonde hair stuck to his face from the rain that cascaded upon his dying form. I didn't even get to be Hokage. How could it go so wrong so fast? The boy couldn't help but wonder. The day had started off like normal with him waking up, eating breakfast and brushing his teeth. That's when it spiraled out of control. He had been called into the Hokage office along with his fellow graduates and friends. Sakura, his crush, was there as well, looking particularly distraught. It was then that Tsunade, the current Hokage, explained the reason for the girl's current state. Sasuke, his friend, or at least ex-friend, had left Konoha in favor for getting power. The first emotion that Naruto felt upon hearing that was anger. Angry at how Sasuke could leave all of them behind. He had everything Naruto wanted in his life. People looked up to him. Girls were interested in him. Hell, even his own sensei favored him. The boy was called a prodigy and he threw it all away for what? Power. Yes, Sasuke had told him of his dream, no ambition. He wanted to kill his brother, the same brother who had killed off his entire clan in a single night. Naruto couldn't understand how he could always act so grumpy. He had tried his best to be friends with him, something he thought had worked, as despite how he often acted, Naruto knew he enjoyed those times like he did himself. So why was he lying here, in the Valley of the End with a fist-sized hole in his chest? Didn't he see he only wanted to bring him back, so they could continue being Team 7? He had promised Sakura he would bring him back. Hey, he chuckled weakly as blood escaped his lips. She would probably be disappointed if she would see him now, calling him a failure. A failure, it was a term often associated with him. Looking back at his life, Naruto couldn't help but agree. They labeled him as a failure of a shinobi, having failed graduation several times. He never let it show though, how much those words got to him. No, instead he kept on smiling, loudly proclaiming how he would one day become Hokage. How one day they would no longer look at him in disgust or loathing. How it would be replaced with respect and adoration. It truly was a child's fantasy, now that he thought about it. He coughed up blood as he could feel himself getting more tired the longer he was lying there. Blanking out for short periods of time as he had to put effort into keeping his eyes open. If only, Naruto thought. If only he would have fought back more seriously. If only his sensei had taught him properly, then perhaps he would now be on his way to Konoha, dragging a battered and bruised Sasuke behind him. And if only Sasuke wasn't so obsessed with revenge. But alas, his life had been against him from the start, he realized. With that he closed his eyes, a bittersweet smile of acceptance graced his face. With that, Uzumaki Naruto, Kyuubi Jinchuriki, son of Uzumaki Kushina and Minato Namikaze, had died. Not too far away, two blurs could be seen traveling through the forest at high speeds. How far away are we, Pakken? Kakashi asked as his lone visible eye focused onto his smaller travel companion. We're close. I can smell blood from here. Pakken replied, its enhanced senses due to him being a dog catching the smell of freshly spilled blood. Nodding grimly, they increased their pace as Kakashi could feel lingering traces of Kyuubi's chakra pass by him. Is this? Kakashi muttered as he looked at the Valley of the End that showed signs of a large battle having been fought. Kakashi, his companion muttered as it held its paw out towards a small speck lying in the middle of the valley. Oh god, Naruto, Kakashi screamed after focusing on it and recognizing the blonde hair of his student. Wasting no time, Kakashi jumped down before sprinting over to where one of his students was lying. No, Kakashi repeated, losing composure as he got closer and noticed he wasn't breathing. A fist-sized hole was in his chest from what he recognized as his technique. His hand trembled as he knelt down and moved towards his jugular vein. Hoping it wasn't what it looked, despite knowing deep down it was already too late. Come on, Kakashi mumbled as he couldn't feel any pulse. A little bit away, Pakken looked sadly as his summoner did his best to keep himself together while praying to any god out there that what he was seeing wasn't real. Sensei, I'm sorry. A lone tear ran down his visible eye after realizing that it had no use. Naruto, his student, his sensei's legacy was dead. No longer among the living and killed by none other than his friend, using a jutsu Kakashi had taught him personally. Kakashi, it's no use. Pakken found it surprisingly hard to form the correct words as he looked sadly at the corpse of the blonde. He had so much potential, Pakken had seen so himself as he had defeated the One-Tails. For someone so young to die by his own signature technique, Pakken could already feel the self-loathing that started to develop inside of Kakashi. It's best if we bring him to Konoha so he could at least get a proper burial. Kakashi didn't reply. Instead he was focused on the smile his dead student held. He recognized the smile, having it seen on so many older shinobi who either had family members of them lose their lives or were on the doorstep to death themselves. It was a smile of acceptance. Acceptance that they were gone, that they were about to die and didn't fight it a single bit. To see such a smile on his student was simply disheartening. Finally Kakashi moved the dead body of his student in his arms before standing up. Pakan, let's head back. The retrieval has been Kakashi had to swallow, a failure. A funeral was held later that same week, one that was attended by everyone that knew him including members of his graduating class. Kakashi had seen both Tsunade and Jiraiya crying as the coffin was lowered into the ground. Kakashi still remembered the look the Hokage had when she saw him enter her office, carrying the dead body of Naruto. She had stared blankly at it before Kakashi had excused himself after noticing she was doing her best not to cry. The woman had closed herself in her office for the rest of the day. He remembered how he had stumbled upon Jiraiya seemingly drinking himself to death in one of the many bars. Kakashi could honestly say the man had never seemed older than he did at that exact moment. Then were all his friends who were informed of Naruto's death shortly after they got out of the hospital. Even now he could see Hinata's look of disbelief as she received the news. Tsunade had shortly thereafter declared Uchiha Sasuke a ranked missing nin with a very sizable bounty, dead or alive. In an unknown place 10 holograms could be seen, each standing on what appeared to be a finger of a massive demonic-looking statue. Setsu, why have you called us all here for? A man spoke up as purple-ringed eyes looked at the plant-like man. We have important news to report. Uzumaki Naruto the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is dead. Silence, no one said a thing as they processed the info and looked at their leader who signaled for Zetsu to continue. Here as almost mocking grin formed as the plant man's eyes locked upon Itachi's figure. It was reported he has been killed by none other than Uchiha Sasuke, Itachi's younger brother after he tried to stop him from going to Orochimaru. Everyone's eyes locked on Itachi who had closed his eyes as he heard what Zetsu told them. But that's not all, Uchiha Sasuke has been marked as an A-rank missing nin by Konoha wanted dead or alive. One could almost feel the amusement Zetsu held as all the attention was on Uchiha Kinslayer. TCH, should have gotten rid of that brat, Deodara spoke up not wasting a chance to badmouth any Uchiha. Now we have to wait several years for the Kyuubi to reform, Itachi said nothing, this is an unfortunate setback. While we weren't ready to seal the beast just yet it is unknown how long it will take for the Beiyu to reform with reports each varying in time. For now I want Zetsu to keep gathering information while keeping an eye out for any large concentrations of chakra. Kakazu, Hidden, both of you keep collecting funds we will be needing soon. The rest of you will head out to Otogakure which I heard was Orochimaru's own village. I want you to go there and turn that village into a crater while keeping an eye out for any information regarding the snake. He's been a thorn in our sides for too long and even now is causing us trouble. Dismissed. One by one the holograms disappeared till only one was remaining. Red, glowing eyes staring upwards which held a small amount of regret that his plan for the Uchiha clan's name to be cleared has backfired. Foolish little brother, was all he said before he too vanished leaving behind an empty cave. The sound of a baby crying was heard, coming from one of the many rooms the hospital held in the underworld. A middle-aged man with black hair could be seen looking peacefully at the blonde-haired woman lying in bed. Holding in her arms was a small baby who had a small amount of blonde hair on his head. As the baby opened his eyes both male and female took note of his cerulean blue eyes that matched the woman that was holding him. So adorable, the woman said as she let the baby play with one of her fingers. What do you think Zekrom-kun? She looked at the black-haired male. I think it's a shame he looks almost identical to you. He joked before answering seriously upon noticing the woman's dangerous look. I mean, he's indeed very cute. He answered nervously. You want to hold him? She asked him. Does little Naruto-kun want to see its daddy? She small baby seemed to laugh as his small arms made grabbing motions towards the man who approached and gently took him out of her arm. He truly looks a lot like you, the man said with a smile. I wonder which power he inherits. Your flames or my power of destruction? We'll have to wait till he's older, the woman said as she carefully sat up. Despite being a phoenix and capable of healing her wounds quickly she still felt the phantom pains of having given birth. Usually children show their powers around their 7 or 8 years old. The door to their room was suddenly opened as both parents looked at who entered. Theotokos, Venelana, Zekrom greeted the two. Lord Bale, you too Lady Riette. Their eyes landed on the small bundle Zekrom was holding. Is that? Venelana said as she looked at her ancestor. Indeed, this is Naruto Bale. Both Venelana and Theotokos took a few steps closer and looked at the small baby. Naruto, strange name, Venelana said to Riette as she noticed he had the same hair color and eyes. He looks a lot like you. He, it means Maelstrom which seems fitting as we can already see his potential. What brings you here? Aside from visiting you and little Naruto-kun here we're checking up ourselves. Venelana placed her hand on her stomach causing the other two adults to understand she meant. The pair left their room shortly thereafter allowing both parents to spend time with their child. At the end of the day Riette was allowed to leave the hospital after several checkups. The following days it was busy at the Bale mansion as visitors from all sorts of devil houses came by to congratulate both Lord Bale and Riette on the birth of their son. A few devils even tried to make several marriage contracts but were quickly shot down the moment Riet heard of those, telling Zekrom she wants her son to find someone to love on his own and refusing any offer that was made. No one dared to argue with the woman who could burn even high-class devils with a single touch. They weren't that stupid. In a destroyed field, one of the many acres of land the Bale clan owned, Naruto could be seen standing. He was currently 13 years old and had grown a lot over the years. His blonde hair had grown both spiky and longer to the point he had a few bangs that were covering his eyes. He was both well-built and tall for his age, being an inch or two taller than his good friends, Syrex and Ajuka. Syrex was the son of Lord and Lady Gremory. Whereas he looked a lot like his mother, Syrex on the other hand was almost a copy of his father with the exception of his face which was more towards Lady Venelana shape. Syrex was a couple months younger than he was, though that didn't stop them from becoming good friends the moment their parents had introduced them to one another. Syrex had also introduced him to Ajuka, who was one of his friends. He was a young boy with green hair which he preferred slicked back and light blue eyes several shades lighter than his own. Despite his young age he was smart, and Naruto wasn't ashamed to admit that when it came to strategy games or anything the like he would not stand a chance. He was by no means stupid, but Ajuka was just another level of smart. Something interesting had happened to him, something that made him a hot topic to talk about throughout the underworld. Unlike his parents who both held one of Underworld's most powerful abilities, those being the Bale's power of destruction and the Phoenix's flames, his powers had mutated much to their shock. The first time he unlocked his power was with his parents when he was just past 8 years old. They were in an empty field much like the one he was standing in now before they instructed him to search deep within himself. He had done what they had asked of him, but neither were expecting the results. The first thing that happened was the incredible amount of power he had released. It was like a dam had been broken. It was so much and so potent everyone in the surrounding area could feel it. Soon thereafter a set of gasps were heard as both Zekrom Bale and Riet looked at their son who stood before him. His arms were covered in flames, but what caught their attention was the color of the flames. They were dark red and crackled with what appeared to dark crimson-colored sparks which destroyed anything it touched. His parents had to take a few steps back from the immense heat that came from the flames covering his arms. His father quickly recognized the sparks as being his clan's ability but was still confused regarding the color of his flames. A glance towards Riet showed she was as surprised as he was, as it looked like some sort of mutation of both their powers, they simultaneously thought. They had asked him to call his power back before immediately bringing him to someone with more understanding on the matter. Once their speculations were confirmed that it was indeed a mutation between Phoenix and Bale powers, and aptly named it, Flames of Destruction. Of course, once news came out that the current Bale heir had an entire new bloodline, a combination between two of Underworld's most wanted powers, they flocked to him to catch a glimpse of said power. The fact that it could apparently be passed down to any future children he might have was enough for the greed to come to the surface. Luckily for Naruto though, his father made sure they all stayed away as he wasn't used to the attention on him. They all listened. After all, nobody wishes to be on bad terms with the Bale clan, the one clan which held the rank of Great King due to having the purest blood. Back with Naruto, they boy could be seen forming dozens of magic circles each second. After realizing that he had incredible reserves for his age, he had started early on with several exercises to help him control it. One such exercise was the one he was doing now. It helped both increase his control over his power while simultaneously helps increasing his casting speed. Some had already began calling Syrex, Ajuka and himself the future of the devil race, as each had shown a high degree of expertise over their powers despite the young age. Not to mention that each of them had above normal amounts of demonic energy compared to devils their own age or older. Releasing a sigh, Naruto stopped what he was doing, allowing the remaining magic circle to shoot a concentrated beam of crimson flame straight down, which expanded upon coming in contact with the ground. Naruto had to squint his eyes as the light it gave off was too much even for him. As it died off, Naruto looked at the scorched area that reached close to 50 foot in diameter. Pretty good for a single attack. Naruto nodded to himself in satisfaction before he turned around and calmly made his way back home. Hopefully his father had something he could do. To Sama, Naruto greeted his father as he entered the mansion before noticing the other people in the room. "Ah, Naruto-kun," his father returned his greeting. "Let me introduce you to Lord and Lady Citri." He motioned over to the couple standing near him. Naruto looked at the black-haired man and woman who both had violet eyes like his father had. "Nice to meet you." Naruto bowed his head in respect before turning his head slightly to the right where a young girl could be seen standing. She had long black hair set in twin tails with a pair of violet eyes that looked at him with barely hidden curiosity. "Who's this?" he asked the adults in the room. "That's our daughter, Seraphal." Lady Citri spoke up. "Come on, Sarah-chan, say hi." Slowly the young girl stepped towards him. Her eyes were focused somewhere else, missing the raised eyebrow Naruto had as he watched her stop in front of him. Nice to meet you, Naruto-tan." She shyly introduced herself, still not looking at him. Naruto stared at her outstretched hand for a moment before accepting it. "Nice to meet you as well, Seraphal." He then looked at his father. "You know where Kar-san is?" He refrained from using the more affectionate suffix in front of the guest. While he never said it out loud, Naruto enjoyed spending time with his mother more than his father. He didn't hate him or anything, but he felt more connected with his mother compared to his father. She should be in the library, at least that's what she told me. Of course, his parents had noticed this even without him having voiced so, but neither made any effort to change him. If he preferred spending time with his mother over his father, they weren't going to stop him. I see, I'll be going then. He bowed once more before walking off to find his mother. Such a well-mannered kid, Lord Citri commented as they watched his form disappear from their eyes. Zekrom chuckled lightly, glad they had beaten proper manners into him early on, or who knows how he might have acted. Naruto released a tired sigh as he entered his bedroom and let his gaze wander around. It was big, way bigger than it should be for being just a bedroom. Then again, most devils owned ridiculously large homes. Initially he was confused why someone would need a house that big when most devil families were made up from 2 to 3 members. He came to realize that most of the spare rooms belonged to staff, which was mostly made up from maids. He dragged his feet towards the bed before allowing his body to fall onto it. Despite his aching muscles having already healed due to the phoenix blood in him, he was still tired despite not looking anything like it. He closed his eyes and before he knew it he was already asleep. Blue eyes fluttered open before staring around in confusion. Already morning, Naruto said to himself before he sat up, only for him to frown as he appeared to be in some sort of sewer. Standing up he noticed just how big the sewer he found himself was. Narrowing his eyes he spotted a bright light up ahead. Looking behind him it was the opposite, as he couldn't see a thing, so with a shrug he started walking towards the light. He arrived in what appeared to be an even bigger room, if that was even possible. A large cage was before him, except it was completely empty. He took a few steps closer to the golden bars, wondering where he was and what sort of animal this cage before him was meant for. A sudden light that appeared in the middle of the empty cage caused Naruto to jump back, his arms already coated in crimson-colored flames in preparation for what was to come. As the light died down, Naruto's eyebrows rose as he stared at what looked like an older version of himself, except weaker. He couldn't sense any demonic energy from the man before him. And what was with the look on the man's face? He was looking at him with an expression befitting one of sadness. Who? Naruto looked the older blonde over. He had blonde, spiky hair more wild than his own. He did note that it was the same shade as his mother's hair and his own. He had a pair of jaw-length bangs and piercing blue eyes so much like himself. He wore a green jacket with over it what he recognized as a white haori which had a flame motif. Finishing it off was the headband the man had around his forehead, which held a strange symbol he couldn't quite recognize. Who are you? He asked warily of the man in front of him. Despite not sensing any demonic or holy energy from him, Naruto could tell the man was still dangerous. Instead of answering him, the blonde man slowly made his way over to him. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he increased the output of his flames the closer he got while carefully stepping back. While he was sure that if he wanted to he could have erased this man from existence, a part of his mind was against it. Don't move closer, Naruto warned as several magic circles came into existence, floating behind him. Despite his warning, the man didn't listen, seemingly aware of the inner conflict he was having in his mind that stopped him from acting till he stood a mere feet away from him. Do something, Naruto could hear himself screaming in his mind. Fight him, kill him, do anything, yet, despite his mind warning him, he was powerless for some reason, and he didn't like it any bit as this man could strike him down without any effort if he wished to. He was surprised, however, as instead of striking him down, the man brought him in a hug. A hug that was strangely comforting for some reason. His arms hung limply to the side, the fire having dissipated the second the man had embraced him. Why does this feel good? He didn't even know this man. Sorry, he heard him mutter. Sorry for what? This wasn't making any sense. I'm sorry for putting such a burden on you. If only I knew, if I knew this was going to happen, I would never have sealed the Kyuubi in my own son. Hold on, son, Kyuubi. While he looked a lot like him, last time he checked his father had black hair and violet eyes, whereas his mother looked more like the person in front of him. And what was this about sealing a Kyuubi? Was that the reason this cage was here? He had heard of Kyuubi Yukai, the strongest of their race, but never of sealing one in a child. I'm sorry, he pushed the man away. I think you're mistaken me for someone else. My father is Zekrom Bale, current leader of the Bale clan, and I can tell you he looks nothing like you. The man frowned. I know, was your father in your life before this one? Naruto was sure his eyebrows would have receded into his hairline if they could. Previous life, like reincarnation and such. I've seen it all, your previous life. From the moment you were born till you died, from my place, here, inside you. Phrasing, Naruto muttered. Though I can't say I really was a father to you, can I? Especially not compared to this other man. Minato had indeed seen it all and could see the genuine care the man had for his son. Which was also his son in some weird way. Wait, what is your name? Oh, he. The man scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Namikaze Minato, Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. Fire Shadow. He looked at the older blonde who didn't reply. He shook his head. Regardless, Minato, what are you doing here? If what you say is indeed true and I have indeed reincarnated, why are you still here? What are you even? I am a small part of my original soul. When I died sealing the Kyuubi in you using the Shikifujin, I imprinted a copy of both myself and Kushina in case you ever needed us. He frowned. Unfortunately, it seems Kushina's imprint is no longer here for some reason. His form began to flicker between transparent and solid. It seems my time is up. Wait already. You still haven't explained the rest. What does this all mean? Where are you from and how does this affect me? Instead of replying, the man brought him in one more hug before he took a few steps back. Despite you no longer being my son, I want you to know that I'm proud of you and once more I'm sorry, Naruto. With that being said, the man slowly became more and more transparent before he was gone. Naruto stared at the spot the blonde had previously occupied with mixed emotions. This had brought up so many questions he honestly wasn't even sure what to do. Naruto groaned lightly as he woke up, blue eyes staring at the ceiling of the room, not bothered in the slightest from the naked body he could feel pressed against his side. How long had it been? How much time had gone by since he first had met the blonde man deep inside his conscious? That's right, 4 years since that day, and he was not any smarter when it came to said topic. The first thing he had done the next day when he was awake was asking his parents if either were familiar with the symbol the man wore on the headband around his head. Unfortunately, neither of his parents had the slightest clue, and when asked about it he told them it came to him in a dream as to not raise any suspicion. There was also that man's name, Minato Namikaze. He had searched through the massive library for any hints regarding said name only to come up with nothing. While there were some Minatos, none matched the description of the one he had met in his mind or wherever it exactly was. So, after numerous failures to gain any information, Naruto had given up and instead using the time to train more vigorously than he did before. His mother was concerned as he had trained himself to the point even his phoenix blood was unable to properly heal him. It had paid off, however, as he was widely known as strongest youth, followed closely behind by his friends Sirex and Ajuka, who, like him, were recognized as prodigies when it came to fighting and power. Surprisingly, Seraphel had made a name for herself with her unique ice magic compared to the rest of her family, whom were all water users. She had undergone quite the personality change as well. No longer was she the same shy little girl he had first met. Instead, she became more outspoken, yet kept her somewhat childish part of her that could get on his nerves sometimes. Though she seemed not to care, in fact she seemed to do it on purpose whenever he was around, much to his dismay. Morning, Naruto-sama. A woman's voice from his right snapped him out of his memories. Looking at the owner of the voice, he stared right at a pair of green eyes which stared sleepily back. This was also something that had changed about him. After reaching a certain age, puberty started to happen, and with that came hormones. He had did his best to ignore them as much as he was capable of, but eventually, after a certain hard training session, he just couldn't help himself and woke up the next morning with one of the many maids that worked for his father in his bed. Naked like himself. Of course, with his luck, his mother had to enter his room that exact day after noticing he wasn't awake yet when it was close to noon. To say she was angry was quite the understatement and chewed him out for a while. Thankfully, his father had managed to calm her down so he could explain that it was bound to happen with how his hormones were acting up, and that was better he did it with one of their maids instead of some random woman he could have picked up from the streets. So eventually she conceded, which prompted him to sleep with their maids whenever he felt like it, as long as they agreed, of course. While he could go out and probably get a girlfriend or whatever, he wasn't really interested in anyone, much to the dismay of several young women, as Naruto had grown quite handsome over the years, looking more and more like the man he had met in his mind those years ago. His training had given his body a nice amount of muscles, nothing over the top though. His hair was a bit longer than his younger self, yet shorter than Minato had, with less spikes in them. His height had increased to the point that he was just a few inches shorter than his father was, much to his delight. Releasing another sigh, Naruto got out of bed before grabbing some clothes and heading for the bathroom that was attached to his room, cleaning himself before preparing for another day. Hopefully one a bit more interesting than lately, as he had gotten quite bored. Perhaps he could ask Sirex for a spar again if he's free. A knock was heard on his door, causing Naruto to look up from the book he was currently enthralled with. It was an interesting book, one that told stories about the early days of devils and angels and how the underworld was formed into what it was today. "Come in," he called as the door leading to his room opened. "Hello, Naruto-sama." He looked at the owner of the voice, which revealed itself to belong to a young woman with long, dark brown hair. Another one of the many maids that worked for his family. Even from where he was sitting in the dimly lit room, he was able to see the light blush that adorned the woman's cheeks as she averted her eyes after noticing he wasn't wearing a shirt. It allowed her to see his well-developed muscles he had gained and kept over the several decades he had been alive. Naruto flicked a few blonde locks to the side, allowing her to see his piercing blue eyes, ones that had lost a part of their warmth after having experienced loss. The maid frowned for a moment as she remembered that day, that fateful day where he had received the news that had changed him into the person that sat before her. Flashback. "What did you call me here for, Sama?" Is Car-san better? Naruto asked as he had hurriedly made his way to his father's office after being asked to get here as soon as he could. His mother had been diagnosed with a very deadly disease a few months ago. It was lethal to devils, but he, along with many others, had speculated she could survive due to her phoenix blood. An emergency, they called it, which seemed to be true as the tension in the room was close to if not palpable. His father looked at him with a look that held no emotion, no expression except coldness. For a moment he said nothing, instead he looked his son over. He had grown a lot, from a young boy into a fine adult, even if he was still very young by devil standards. He had gotten taller, standing at 6 feet exact, making him as tall as he himself was. His blonde hair that held an unique spikiness to it still as vibrant as ever. Blue eyes, so much like his mother, stared curiously at him, wondering what he was here for as he had taken a break from training today. Then there was also his power. Zekrom could feel the hairs on his neck stand up from the close proximity he was with his son, who was radiating power despite actively suppressing it. Despite his young age, Zekrom was not stupid. He knew that Naruto's reserves had already surpassed his own, as even he was not able to make others feel so conscious of themselves by being just in the same room as someone. Well, he was, but not in the way his son was able to. With him it was mainly out of fear others had in potentially offending him or doing something that could hurt their standing in the underworld. Naruto watched as his father stared at him. Unknowingly he was finding the best possible way to break the news to him while knowing that his reaction wouldn't be nice regardless. Sighing, Zekrom decided that getting straight to the point would be the best in this situation. Your mother. Zekrom noticed the change in his posture when he mentioned her, the person Naruto treasured above everyone else, something that made this all the more painful for him. Naruto-kun, your mother, Riette, is dead. Zekrom closed his eyes, awaiting his reaction. Something which he didn't have to wait long for. CRRK. The temperature in the room quickly rose to unbearable levels as sweat ran down Zekrom's head. What? He heard his son mutter as he released a massive amount of power as cracks formed around the reinforced room. Naruto-kun. He stopped as he noticed his son seemed to mumble something he was unable to properly hear. Impossible. Why, you're lying. She can't. She's supposed to be invincible. He looked at his father, hoping that he was joking with him, that he did not just say that his mother, the woman he cared the most about in the world, was no longer among them. Wasn't even there. He shut his eyes tightly as tears trickled down his cheeks. Tears that were worth a fortune to anyone who would have gotten their hands on them in the right situation, but Naruto didn't care as a teleportation circle formed underneath his feet. He didn't even look at his father as he was teleported away. Zekrom sat down in his chair before releasing a tired sigh as he looked at the now destroyed room due to his son releasing his powers. Scorch marks formed on the ground and curtains with some burned to crisps. Large cracks had formed in the wall and the floor, both running through the entire room. He should call someone to fix it when he had time. Out of nowhere, an absolutely massive amount of demonic energy washed over him, causing his heart to skip beating for a split second as his fingers dug into his chest to keep him from collapsing. He was sure he wasn't the only one affected, as it was so potent and filled with hate that no doubt the maids were doing much worse. Following the spike of energy, the air got noticeably warmer to the point he had to open a window lest he be cooked alive. As he opened the window, he looked outside and saw a massive pillar of flames shooting high in the sky. Even from several miles away he had no squint from the amount of light it gave off. It seems you have truly surpassed me, my son. Zekrom noticed as the amount of power he could feel being released was already higher than his own. I can only hope he calms down, as I'm sure the entire underworld could feel if not see what is happening. Flashback end. After that meeting, the relationship between him and his father had worsened to the point that they rarely spoke to each other. Naruto had even moved his room to a different side of the large mansion. The reason for this was because how his father acted after his mother had died. He acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just lost his wife. It bothered Naruto. It bothered him to the point that they had their first real fight, which only strained their relationship more, to the point that one would think they were more strangers instead of family. It got even worse when his father had tried to introduce some woman from a house he gave no crap about. Naruto had stared at the woman with disdain as she attempted to replace his mother. He cared nothing about her and had let it known verbally, only for his father to apologize to her for his behavior. While some saw his actions as childish, Naruto didn't care. He only knew that he did not like that woman who tried to replace his mother half a decade after she had died. Yes, his father was allowed to date someone else. He didn't expect the man to stay single for the rest of his long life, but that did not mean he was going to like it. His father couldn't do anything aside from scold him for his behavior, as a fight would lean in his favor, both due to his higher reserves and unique bloodline. A bloodline which made it so he couldn't threaten to kick him out of the clan, as he would most likely be picked up by the Phoenix due to him having their blood in his veins. And if that didn't work, he could go to any other devil house which would be more than happy to take him, in hopes of incorporating his unique bloodline into their own and thereby elevating their status amongst the underworld for having a perfect mix between Phoenix and Bale, with the best of both and then some. Is there something you need? Naruto asked the woman standing in his room. She had been spacing out for the past few minutes, much to his silent amusement. No, I am fine. The woman shook her head, embarrassed at being caught like that, but quickly collected herself. Lord Bale has called for me to inform you that he wishes to speak with you. I see, he muttered as they closed the book he was reading. His slight movement caused the flames of the candles in the room to flicker and change color to crimson, giving the room an eerie glow. Standing up, he walked over to the closet and put on a burnt orange shirt along with a fitting white jacket. Let's go then, he motioned for the woman to lead as he closed the door behind him. As he walked through the hallways next to the maid, his mind drifted off to other thoughts. Ever since he had first met that strange man who looked so much like him, Minato, he had experienced several dreams, borderline nightmares, when he went to sleep. They were about himself, or at least a younger version of himself. He would find himself in a strange place called Konoha, which, as weird as it sounds, didn't exist in any of the history books. There, in that place, people were ninjas or shinobi, whatever, he couldn't quite remember. They weren't like ninjas that existed in this day and age, as they were quite the opposite of stealthy. Not to mention that those people there, humans, were capable of using chakra, an energy source exclusive to yokai, which allowed them to bend elements to their will, such as spitting out massive fireballs or create large water dragons. While those feats weren't anything special, as the Citrian Phoenix could do those without a sweat, the fact that those were just regular humans was most surprising. Some dreams were about a younger version of himself surviving on the streets, getting spit and cursed at, while in others he would find himself enduring torture no child should have experienced, regardless of what they did. It made him realize how evil humans could be, only increasing his dislike for their race. Oddly enough, the dreams and/or nightmares would always end with him ending up with him waking up as a young boy no older than 13, would shove an electric-covered fist into his chest as strange red eyes with black tomos would stare lifelessly as he died. Was that what Minato meant when he spoke about him being reborn? That he had died in that world only to end up here, as heir of the most revered family in the underworld? Would those dreams be his memories then, or was it something completely different? The only person aware that he was experiencing those dreams was his mother, whom he had informed. She was the only one he had told, as they would often just spend time together, where he would tell her about what happened in those dreams as she would run her fingers through his hair. Now that he thought about it, she would always just smile at him, like she knew something that he didn't. Unfortunately, he would never know why she did it or what those smiles meant, as she was no longer among the living. He was pulled out of his thoughts as they stopped in front of the door leading to his father's office, the woman who escorted him knocking on the door before hearing Zekrum's voice on the other side telling them to enter. The door opened and they both walked in. I've brought Naruto-sama here, Bale-sama. She bowed her head in respect. Good, you're dismissed. He waved her away as she closed the door behind her, leaving father and son in the room. Take a seat. He gestured to the chair that was on the other side of his desk. He looked at it for a moment before, with an almost unnoticeable shrug, walked over and sat down. You wanted to see me? He asked, quite rude as he made himself comfortable. Yes, I did, Zekrom said, not bothered by his greeting as his expression turned serious. I take it you're aware of the current tensions between the three biblical factions. Naruto nodded his head. How could he not be? Anywhere he went, he noticed the slight actions people made. That's not even to mention the things he would overhear being talked about in secret, or the information that would, accidentally, leak when he was nearby in an attempt to get in his good graces. There's a possibility of a war breaking out between heaven and the underworld, and surprisingly Grigory. The exact reason I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if it were for some petty reason like most wars are fought by humans. Though I have no idea why the latter would join in, seeing as it should be none of their business. Zekrom allowed a small smile to grace his face as he listened to his son talk. He had quickly come to realize that he wasn't a big fan of humans, mainly because they supported heaven and thereby the biblical god, but he also held no small amount of disgust for the race of warmongering beings, or so he thought at least. It was somewhat amusing though for a race of humans to commit acts of atrocity that made even devils think twice. Is that why you called me here for? Zekrom shook his head. No, the reason I called you here is because I'm informing you that in a month the Satans will wage war upon heaven. Naruto allowed one of his eyebrows to rise in response. I, along with other heads of the families, each received a letter which detailed information that the current Satans have officially declared war, so it's no longer just a rumor. I'm telling you to get ready, as devils will be relying on you, just like your friend Syrex, who no doubt is having the same conversation with Zeoticus. You two along with Ajuka are looked up at as a new age for us devils and to bring us to greatness. This war is where you will prove your worth, as you will no doubt be fighting on the front lines. I too will prepare myself, having not fought for a long time. He allowed his power of destruction to spark into existence, which was still as potent as ever. I see, thank you for informing me. I'll take the month to finish something I'm working on, which will give me quite the advantage for the war. A sadistic smirk made its way onto his face before it was gone. I'll be taking my leave then. Oh, Naruto-kun. Zekrom's voice stopped him just as he was about to leave the room. Yes, he turned his head, annoyed at being stopped and the familiar way he addressed him. In the letter they're asking if you can help producing more phoenix tears. The Phoenix family is assigned with making sure there will be enough tears to heal wounded that we will no doubt suffer, and since your tears have the same healing ability, they're asking if you can help. Single quote, single quote. Perhaps. If I can complete what I'm currently working on, I can see if I can help. He shrugged uncaringly. He doubted he had an actual option not to, but the way he phrased it made it seem like he was willing to help. Great. I'll let them know. I'm also informing you that Miriam is expecting a child. He looked at his son, curious as to see his reaction. His eyes turned cold as ice, not betraying anything except immense dislike at the mention of her name. I see. He didn't say anything else as he left the room without looking back, leaving his father to sigh in sadness at his strained relation with his son. He hadn't planned for his current wife to get pregnant this soon. It was hard, very hard for pure-blooded devils to get pregnant. Why? Nobody knew exactly, but it didn't change the fact that it often took several centuries between pregnancies, which is why it came to such a surprise to hear that he was having another child before Naruto would reach his 100th birthday. It also couldn't have happened at a worse time, with war breaking out soon, meaning his wife won't be able to fight. Though it did give him an incentive to win, as otherwise he wouldn't get to see his youngest child. So I take it you've been told of the news as well, Eni? Sirex spoke to the others in a jovial mood, one that didn't fit with the general air of somberness that was in the room. Shortly after his father told him of the news, he was visited by Sirex, Ijuka, Seraphal and Falbium. The latter, who was the newest member to their small group of friends. He was pretty relaxed, borderline lazy, but when you could have a conversation with him they were always very interesting. Yup, father informed me just before you all came by. They want my help producing Phoenix tears. I told them I'd help if I finish with my own crap. He looked at Sirex and Ijuka. Did your parents go over some dull speech about the future of the devils? He asked, curious if only his father did it. He received 2 nods. Yay. Something about proving ourselves right. Correct. What about you, Seraphal? He looked at the only girl in the room who pouted at him. Moo. I told you to call me Saratan. She grumbled at his refusal to address her in the way she wanted. Naruto looked unamused at her antics, something she quickly picked up on as she got to the point. Well, Ka-san and Tu-san didn't really say anything specific, they just told me to take care of myself and allies to make sure I survive. Naruto hummed, not really paying attention as he began juggling a small fireball he had formed in his palm. His eyes following it as it bounced in his hands. The others in the room could feel the heat it was generating despite being so small, just proving how powerful his flames are. By the way, Naruto, what are you working on? A technique or something else? The flame died out as Naruto closed his palm, the other members in the room looking at him in interest, making him smirk. Sorry, but it's a secret. I can tell you though that I got the idea from you. He looked at Sirex. Me, I wonder if it has something to do with. He saw his friend's eyes lit up. Oh, something like that, huh? Naruto nodded with a smile that was matched by him. Good luck. It took me quite a while, but it's definitely worth it, as you have seen so yourself. The others in the room looked confused about what they were talking about but didn't voice their confusion. Instead deciding to wait, as they will no doubt see what they are talking about in the upcoming war. Anyway, is there anything that needs to be discussed? I have personal matters to attend to. He looked at the others, each of them shook their heads indicating that he could go. Cool, I'll see you all later or something. He stood up as a teleportation circle formed underneath him, taking him out of the room. Naruto casually walked through the busy crowd that existed out of hundreds of devils. In fact, he walked a bit too calm for the current situation they were facing, as they were all gathered on a large, empty grass field shielded by several powerful barriers. It was time. A month had passed and war had officially started. He could see the nervous expressions of men and women alike as he walked. He was surprised at himself as instead of fear he felt excitement. Excitement at the prospect of going all out, to finally discover his limits and surpass them while he was at it. He spotted the familiar shade of crimson which belonged to his friend Sirex, accompanying him with their other friends. Hey, he greeted him lazily with a casual wave as he stopped next to him. As he looked around, he could see the several glances sent their way. For good reason, he mused to himself. When he made his way to his friends, he could easily find them, as both Ijuka and Sirex had reserves bigger than anyone here bar his own. It pretty much made him a beacon, which was only amplified as he joined them. Hey Naruto, did you manage to finish what you were trying to achieve? Sirex asked him. Naruto looked at him for a moment before a smirk formed. Yep, I completed it 2 weeks ago actually. His answer surprised them. 2 weeks, Sirex repeated before his eyes widened and was joined by the others who held similar expressions. Are you telling me that immense spike of demonic energy that could be felt through the underworld was you? Despite trying, he couldn't quite keep the shock out of his voice. How could he not, as it was talked about by everyone? Not to forget that it had rained for 3 days straight following the heat wave that had affected them all. Naruto scoffed. Of course it was me. Who else has enough power with the exception of you and Ijuka? He waved his hand, unconcerned by their looks. Just wait till you see it in action. You can't miss it. he said with pride. They could feel his excitement and didn't know if they had to be worried for him since he seemed to be almost looking forward to fighting. Sensing a small, almost unnoticeable spike in energy, he followed it to the source where his father could be seen. Surrounding him was Lord Phoenix, his uncle with blonde hair much like his if not for the slightly darker color he had. Next to him was a person he quickly recognized as Sirek's father with crimson hair which was unique to the Gremori family. He locked eyes with his father. Neither said a thing as they conversed with just their eyes. Don't die, he rolled his eyes. You should be more worried about yourself than others. After all, those old bones of yours will be put to good use. His father scoffed like he was offended before his expression changed to one more gentle. He stared at his son before giving a firm nod, telling him that he trusted him to take care of himself and come out of this alive. Despite their strained relation, Naruto couldn't quite help the smile from forming as he sent him a salute. He felt someone tap his shoulder and turned around to see Ajuka, who motioned for him to look towards the front. Doing what he was told, he allowed his eyes to widen if only a bit as he watched the four Satans stand next to each other on an elevated platform. Naruto zoned out as they began talking. Something about taking rightful place amongst them. A bit of revenge talk he was able to take in, and it was finished by showing the rest that they were the most powerful or whatever. Honestly, Naruto cared little for anything that they said. His blood was pumping, he could feel his energy circulating in his body, ready to be let loose any moment. The urge for a good fight calling out his name. He could already see himself slaughtering all of them, one by one, be they angel or fallen. Hell, at this point he would probably even kill a devil should they get in their way. Unknowingly to him his eyes changed from blue to red as he slowly began leaking out killing intent, accompanied by a bloodthirsty smile that promised death and destruction. It started out small, but the more he let his mind wander the bigger it grew as fellow devils began feeling it and looked for the source, which was him. Flames began to flicker into existence surrounding his form. Some formed at his feet while others around his shoulders and fingers. His friends took a step back as they could feel the sheer amount of maliciousness he gave off. They weren't the only ones, as even the Satans stopped their speech in favor of watching him, with each holding smirks at seeing how ready he was. Like everyone else, they knew who he was and the potential he held in him. Deciding to not let him waiting, the barrier around them dropped, causing everyone to feel the large source of holy energy that came from hundreds of miles away. Not waiting a second longer, he jumped up high in the air before two large wings out of his own flames formed around his back. He didn't even spare them a glance as he shot forward, wanting to make first contact and spill blood.